Hey, what's going on, guys? Good morning, everybody. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about remote work. And we're starting to see tech companies, including social media companies, like Snapchat, calling people back into the office. Remote work is a topic that we've talked about a lot over the past 2 years. It's kind of a controversial topic and a topic that people have very strong feelings about on both sides of the equation. Some people love remote work. Some people hate remote work. Some people actually prefer office. Some people despise in office. And a lot of people are finding that they like hybrid arrangements. Prior to the Mexican beer cough, something like 5 to 6% of the workforce was working remotely. During the Mexican beer cough, you probably had 50 to 60% of the workforce working remotely. I haven't really seen any good numbers about, what percentage of people are currently working remotely. I would guess it's probably 30 to 35%. And it's predicted that by the end of 2023, approximately 25% of the workforce will be working remotely. So it's still about a 5x over the amount of people who were working remotely prior to the Mexican beer cough. Working remotely or working from home has definitely become more common. It's more socially accepted. It's more normal, and more employees are wanting it. But it's probably not going to stick around at the level that it was during the height of the Mexican beer cough, right? It's going to wind up being about half of what it was at the beginning. Now, one thing that we've been hearing for a while is, it's been an employee job market for a while. Employees have been able to, demand more, demand better pay, demand better hours, demand more vacation time. These past couple of years, a lot of people have been hopping jobs, like really multiplying their income, and it's been a great thing for employees. But I think everybody's kind of known that as soon as the economy turns, as soon as layoffs start happening, as soon as we go into a recession, employees are going to lose a lot of this bargaining power. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting about this whole remote work discussion that's going on, a few weeks back, Elon Musk had called employees back into the office. A lot of Twitter employees were really upset, and a lot of Twitter employees wound up quitting. A lot of people said maybe that was part of Elon Musk's plan, lay off 50% of the workforce, and then hope that maybe another 20 to 25% of the workforce just leave on their own when you take away remote work. Everybody was acting like Elon Musk was a really bad guy for doing this. But one thing that I've noticed is a lot of other tech companies, a lot of other social media companies are following suit and aren't necessarily getting the same backlash that Elon did. I'm by no means an Elon Musk fanboy. I'm not even really a particularly big fan of him, though I do kind of like, I do like that he supports free speech and kind of wants open dialogue and doesn't want censorship and people pushing certain societal narratives. I think that's cool, but I'm not necessarily a big Elon Musk fan. But when Elon Musk laid off half of Twitter's workforce, everyone said, oh my gosh, Elon Musk is a terrible guy, right? He's a corporate raider. People are kind of ignoring the fact that Twitter was going to cut $750 to $800 million from their payroll, whether Elon Musk bought them or not. Then Elon Musk laid off half of the employees. Everybody said, oh my gosh, he's so terrible, he's so terrible. But what did we see shortly after that? We saw Netflix laid off a ton of employees. Carvana's laid off 10,000 employees. Meta's laid off 10,000 employees. Amazon has either laid off or is in the process of laying off 20,000 employees, with more layoffs to come in 2023. Snapchat laid off employees, right? Like Elon Musk did it first. He was a bad guy. But then everybody followed suit and everybody else started laying off employees. Elon Musk called employees back into the office, and everybody said, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. He just wants to micromanage people. But now, according to this article on The Hedge, Snapchat and other tech companies are also calling their employees back into the office. So we'll take a look at this article in a second. But I believe Snapchat wants people in the office 3 days a week. Another thing kind of interesting related to this story, New York City recently made a law that the details of the law are kind of cloudy. We haven't really seen what's in the law, but New York City is passing a law, or in the process of passing a law, that will make it illegal for companies to, spy on employees at home, but really also kind of like track performance. Like what does that mean? Does that mean you can't have like a keylogger or track people's mouse movements? Does that mean you're not allowed to track any performance metrics whatsoever? We don't really know what that means, but if employees are going to be given a little bit more freedom freedom and autonomy to work from home, You can bet that employers are going to want to keep a little bit of a better eye on their employees. And if we see things like New York's law that prohibits the ability to monitor their employees at home, and again, monitor is a very vague word. We don't really know what that means, but we may just see employers say, if I can't monitor my employees or track performance and make sure that they're actually working at home, maybe we'll just wind up calling everybody back into the office. One thing that I've always said about this whole remote work discussion is, I think there's benefits to remote work. I think there's benefits to in-person work. I think hybrid is a pretty good model. One reason I think people really like remote work is it allows them to kind of take their lives back. I think if we had, say, 6-hour work days instead of 8-hour work days, or if we had 4-day work weeks as opposed to 5-day work weeks, I think people might be a little bit more open to going back into an office because they're able to take some of their life back, right? On Friday, you can kind of run your errands and do a lot of your, kind of life necessities, and then you still have a full weekend to kind of enjoy and have some leisure and enjoy family and friends, and you're not having to waste half of your weekend, taking care of errands, going to get a haircut, whatever else. I think what people like about remote work is, they can do some laundry around the house. They can take the dog for a walk. Maybe they can do some meal prepping. They can get a workout in. People are actually able to take back some of their lives. And, workplaces would be great if you could knock out your work in 20 hours and just wind up going home and not working more. That would be excellent, but I said this time and time and again, it's beating a dead horse, but we're very attached to the idea of time for money. If I'm an employer and I'm paying you, I expect you to have your butt in the seat for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. And if you are able to get your work done, and I'm not saying how I feel, I'm explaining kind of how an employer would feel about this. If you are able to get your work done in 20 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, your employer is going to want to do one of two things. They're going to say, okay, if you can get your work in 20 hours a week, I only want to pay you for 20 hours a week. Or the other alternative is if you can get your work done in 20 hours a week, well, there's a whole nother 20 hours a week that I can load you up with other things to do, other tasks to do. Ultimately, how I think workplaces should work is, you're not paid by the hour, you're not paid for sitting in a chair, and you're not paid for sitting in front of a screen. You're paid for a certain skill set. You're paid for meeting a certain result, for getting a certain number of sales, for finishing a certain number of pages, you have a specific task, and when you do that task, your work is done, and that's kind of what you're being paid for. But again, the way that employers are going to see this is if you can do your work faster, I'm either only going to pay you for how much time you're working, or I have more work that I can give you. So that, until we kind of get past that, I don't think remote work is ever going to be commonplace, or I think there's always going to be kind of this struggle. A lot of people seem to have really strong feelings on both sides of this issue, and I don't think we really have the data to back it up. Also, I think it's somewhat unfair judging remote work on how people performed during the Mexican beer cough period. If a company truly is going to go remote, you make sure everybody has the proper equipment. You make sure you have the proper communication channels set up, right? Like there's a lot of thought that goes into getting everything prepped for a remote workforce. But during the Mexican beer cough, we didn't do that because everything happened so quick. It was like one day, oh my gosh, there's this new cold, and the next day, everybody's working from home, and people didn't have all the right equipment. Companies were trying to hodgepodge communication tools and ways for people to work together and kind of communicate. So I think in a lot of ways, we didn't really give remote work a fair chance or a fair judgment because companies didn't really have the time to prepare. But you will hear people with very strong feelings saying one way is better or the other way is better. I got one of my best friends works remotely, and he just got back from Key West. And I think it's cool that when you work remotely, you can travel, you can go to new destinations, so you're not responsible for being in the office. But in terms of how much work people are actually doing, I had kind of asked my buddy, and he's kind of notorious. He, in the middle of the day, he'll come and hang out with me and my dog. Sometimes we'll hang out with some of our other friends. He'll go for runs. He'll go to the gym. But when he was in Key West, I was like, did you actually get time to enjoy it, or were you working? And he was like, normally like I'd wake up at 8, have my coffee, put in about 2 hours of work. So we might work from like 8 to 10. He's like, then the rest of the day I'd kind of go off, explore, go to the beach, go snorkeling, whatever. And he's like, then I'd come back at 5, 6 o'clock, answer some emails, finish some things up. So out of an 8-hour day, his company, quote unquote, thinks he's working an 8-hour day. He's actually putting in 2 or 3 hours of work. Now again, if he accomplished everything that the company expects from him, in my mind that's kind of okay. But I'm guessing most employers would look at this as okay, you only got 3 hours of work to do. We can find another 5 hours of work for you to do. So I've rambled about this long enough. Let's hop into this article. Snap and other tech firms want employees back in the office. Silicon Valley employees who have turned work from home into drink wine and watch Netflix with your cat between emails from home have been put on notice. And here's another thing. We saw a stat from back during the height of the Mexican beer cough. And the stat found that something like 52 or 54% of employees admitted to drinking on the job. So for everybody who says, oh, I'm more productive, workers are responsible enough to work from home and really kind of do what they're supposed to be doing. During the pandemic, and granted it was a stressful time and everything, but during that period, over half of workers were drinking on the job. So, it kind of puts into question how hard are people really working at home. Management at several tech companies have told employees they'll be required to come into the office at least 3 days a week if they want to keep their jobs, according to MarketWatch reports. The latest salvo came from Snap Inc., Snapchat. Snap last month, which expects employees to spend at least 80% of their time in the office, according to an internal memo obtained by Bloomberg. Snap chief executive Evan Spiegel says the policy, which starts in February, will help the company achieve, quote-unquote, full potential and allow workers to reach our collective success. Now, I do think that there's certain types of work that are more accommodating to be done at home and other types of work that it helps to be around other people. If you work in a creative field where you're, kind of collaborating in a creative way with other people, maybe in like a marketing or social media management type role, I think something like that may benefit or may lend itself to having actual people in the office. If you're doing accounting or data entry or kind of a very solo task, maybe you don't necessarily need the people around you. According to market research from IDC, large companies that deploy reactive and tactical hybrid work models will suffer an estimated 20% revenue loss in 2024 due to job attrition and underperforming teams. I think one thing about trying to get people in the office 80% of the time, I'm just taking a guess, but I'm guessing this gives companies a productivity benchmark. So if you're in the office Monday through Wednesday and, I don't know what your job is, you might be measured by, how many web pages you can design, how many landing pages you can design, how many emails you can make, how many social media posts you can make, how many pages of data entry you can do. It could be a number of different things. But if you're in the office Monday through Wednesday, we can kind of get an average of how productive you are during those days. Then on Thursday and Friday when you're at home, if we see the amount of work that you're able to get accomplished or the amount of productivity you're able to see, if we see that drop on Thursday and Friday, well, why is it that you are so much more efficient in the office than at home? Are you distracted? Are you slacking? Maybe we need to bring people in the office 5 days a week instead of 3 days a week. I'm just kind of guessing this is where companies are coming at this from. Perhaps the most notable case is Twitter, whose employees Elon Musk put on notice in early November that the company's work-from-home arrangement wasn't going to cut it, and employees would be required to spend at least 40 hours per week in the office. And one thing that's kind of telling about that, 40 hours a week to most people is a full work week. Elon Musk seems to be kind of a hard-charging boss, and he expects more than 40 hours a week. So if Twitter employees are expected to work 60 hours a week or even 80 hours a week, which granted, it's crazy, but people who go to work for a company run by Elon Musk, they kind of know what they're getting into, and they're on board for that, right? Like their work becomes their life. They're really passionate about what they're doing. We can argue about whether it's right or wrong, but if you go to work for a company that's run by Elon Musk, you kind of know that that's what it's going to be. So if you are working at Twitter, you're going to put 40 hours a week in at the office, and you're probably expected to put another 20 to 40 hours a week in at home. Back into the article, company C3.ai wasn't having the work from home at all. Now employees filling 3 floors of a Redwood City, California office building. Everyone is here and have been for a year, said CEO Tom Siebel. Look at that packed parking lot. People need to interact in person to effectively collaborate. Box Inc. CEO Aaron Levy told MarketWatch, it is super important to have people work side by side and in person, adding, you will see more momentum. And adds Paul Friesen, Chief Marketing Officer of Rapid, which has advocated for workers to spend at least 3 days per week in the office, said, we value having employees come together, collaborate, and drive productive outcomes in person, while also understanding the new work environment and the need to balance in office with work from home and remote experiences. And, that's kind of what I think. I think hybrid is kind of the best model that brings together the best of both worlds. Here's one other thought on this whole remote work thing. I think a lot of whether you're going to be working remotely or now in an office. And what kind of drove a lot of companies to go remote or in office is simply timing. Companies normally sign 10-year leases for offices, or at the very least 5 years. So if your company re-signed a lease in, say November or December of 2019, and they're locked in until 2029, well, there's probably a good chance that they're going to want people in the office because they're paying for this office for the next 9 years, even after the Mexican Beer Cough is over. On the other hand, if your company's office lease expired, I don't know, let's say June of 2020, it's probably pretty likely that they didn't renew the lease. Like, this Mexican Beer Cough thing looks like it could extend on for a couple years. Who knows how long this thing's going to last for? There's no sense in renewing this office lease, and maybe they just said, we're just going to let everybody go remote. So I think a lot of what plays into this is simply timing of when your company either did re-up their lease or is set to re-up their lease. But that's just kind of one other thought that I had. That's kind of all I have to say about this matter. I would be curious to hear from you guys. If you run companies, what are you doing with your employees? If you work for a company, what is your employer doing? I think a lot of companies had held off on calling people back into the office because, they didn't really know if the Mexican Beer Cough stuff and lockdowns would wind up coming back, if masks would wind up coming back this fall. Here we are, mid-December. I think it's pretty safe to say that, we are hearing numbers are upticking and everything else. LA County, keeps threatening to bring back a mask mandate. I know New York City health officials are recommending people wear masks, but they're not requiring it. But I think it's pretty safe to say that these Mexican Beer Cough preventative measures aren't coming back. And I think if we make it through a couple months of winter and there's no upticks in that, I think maybe companies will feel more comfortable to either re-up office leases or call people back into the office. There's no sense calling people back into the office in August if by October or November, oh my gosh, we got to send everybody home again, or everybody's got to wear masks again. So, I think after this winter, or at least after the height of this winter, companies are going to feel like, okay, this Mexican Beer Cough stuff is kind of all over, and whatever we want to do, we feel safe to do it now. But yeah, that's all I got. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts, opinions, and comments about this story, so go ahead and drop them down below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below, ring the bell, and if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.